welcome back to Novel Idea. My name is Dia, and today I just wanted to kind of wrap up July. I have 3 books that I haven't told you about yet that I managed to finish in July. So I wanted to talk about those and then maybe do just a little mini kind of book haul because I've gotten a few things recently. All right, everybody. So I think I told you at the end of my last week's wrap up that I was going to be finishing up Locklands by Robert Jackson Bennett, that I would be reading Grief of Stones by Katherine Addison, and that I also had Bone Ship's Wake by R.J. Barker in at the library. And I managed to read all of them. I actually finished Bone Ship's Wake on the very first thing in the morning on August 1st. But I did manage to read all 3 toward the end of July. And so let me just tell you about each one. So Locklands is the 3rd book in the Founders Trilogy, and it did everything pretty much that I expected it to do, and I think it has almost a sci-fi feel to it because the magic system in these books is very kind of almost mechanically inclined. So I enjoyed the overall story in these books, and I enjoyed his writing style. I am not one of the biggest fans of this series. I have friends here on BookTube this is probably one of their all-time favorite series. This is not one of mine, but none of that is Robert Jackson Bennett's fault or the fault of the books themselves. It's just not my cup of tea so much. But this series does wrap up really, really well. And it's almost too neat of a little bow for me at the end. I kind of wish that it would have felt like the stakes were a little bit more real. But at the end, it felt very much like, yes, the stakes were there, and yes, there were consequences, but ultimately those consequences weren't quite as harsh as we thought they might be. So Locklands I really enjoyed, like I said, and I ended up giving it a B+. So it is an 89%, and I will probably read through this series again at some point because I think now that I have kind of the full picture, being able to go back through it and understand it a little bit better is gonna maybe even raise that score for me. Okay, and then the next one was Katherine Addison's Grief of Stones, and this is part of the Goblin Emperor Empire. The Goblin Emperor I really, really loved, and it was something that I was looking for because everything that I was reading that was fantasy at the time was so war and battle driven, and I was just so tired of being in battle after battle after battle after battle, and armor being described, and how this lunge was done so that they could swipe underneath the feet of this guy and stab him from this way. I was done. And the Goblin Emperor ended up being more of a political fantasy, and it is so well done, I think, the way that we are introduced to the world, the way that we are introduced to the characters, the depth of the character and the main character especially, and the way that we get to see him struggle and find some growth is just incredible to me. Then she went on to write Witness for the Dead. And the Witness for the Dead is in The Goblin Emperor. But suddenly we were put in this book where you are getting a play-by-play, and I do mean play-by-play. I went up the steps. I opened the door. I saw this. This was also in the room. This thing happened too. And it was so boring. And I was so disappointed. So when I saw that Grief of Stones was coming out, I was really, really hoping that it was going to be back with the Goblin Emperor, and we were going to see maybe some more growth from him, and maybe a little bit more of the other characters that we met in that story, and where they are now, and what is happening with them now. And we were back with The Witness for the Dead, and it was back to a play-by-play. And I was really bored. There was a new character that was introduced in the story that I actually really liked, and that added a little bit of texture and nuance to it. And I ended up giving this a B-. And I don't think I'll ever revisit the 2 follow-up stories to The Goblin Emperor, but I am actually wanting to reread The Goblin Emperor now, because I'm like, was I wrong? Did I miss something when I was reading this? Was I just so relieved that there weren't a bunch of battles? So anyway, that was A Grief of Stones. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about it because I don't want to spoil anything for anybody, but we are back with The Witness for the Dead in Grief of Stones, and we are following basically his career and some things that happen as a result of him being a witness for the dead. Okay, and then we come to The Bone Ship's Wake. What a way to end the month, you guys. Oh my gosh. I loved this series. I loved it. There are 100 Isles. That's the name of the kingdom. And the 100 Isles have always built their societies and their ships on the bones of these great sea dragons that have long since disappeared, but when the 100 Isles were trying to gain control, the sea dragons were still around. And there are certain people in the kingdom that are called callers, and there are also certain creatures in the kingdom that have to do with the wind and that speak to the wind, need the caller, can call the wind, those kinds of things. And this all has to do with their ships, and their ships are the main part of their society industry. And they, go out and bring things back and forth between the isles. So they do trade, they do fishing, they do all of that. And they are the main resource for commerce on the 100 Isles. And this is a very female-based society. The language that they use, the rulers, the captains of the ship, even the titles of the captains it's all very female oriented. And it's the first time that I've ever read anything even close to that all-encompassing female society. One of the main characters, in fact, in the first book, the main character, has been exiled to a prison ship, basically, and has been told that she is no longer part of the guild of trade and all of that kind of thing. Main character is called Lucky Meese, and she has charge of her own ship. She has charge of her own crew, and the one thing that she wants above all else is peace. Her whole crew agrees with her and would love to have that as well. I loved the character development in this book. The world building was fascinating. The type of magic is fascinating. I was completely entranced from beginning to end. I cannot believe that it took me so long to read this third book, you guys. I wanted to read it ages ago. This is the problem with relying on your library and having a very small library. And of course, there are other people that want to read the books that you want to read, of course. And so, needless to say, this was a very strong A, if not an A plus series for me. And this book in particular was a very high A. And I am going to give it a 97%. I now have read 3 series in their entirety this year with Daniel Abraham's Long Price Quartet, with Michael J. Sullivan's Legends of the First Empire, and now R.J. Barker's Tide Child trilogy. And I have loved every single one of these series. And out of all 3 of those series, I own 1 book. That's it. 1 book out of 3 series. So I don't own any of the Bone Chips. I am going to have to buy them though, because I can't wait to reread them. Okay, so that is everything. That's my July wrap up. I ended up reading, I think, 25 books this July. I think that's how many I read. And of course, some of those were little tiny short stories, and some of them were poems, and so, or poetry books. And so, you know, not all of them were epic fantasy novels. All right, let me show you a little book haul. So first book is Ellen Montgomery, and this is Among the Shadows, and this is Tales from the Darker Side, which I never even knew existed until Courtney from Courtney Reads was showing her Ellen Montgomery collection, and she had this book, and I thought, now that is my kind of October read. So this is supposed to be about a love that is so strong that it exists even after death. And so, yeah, Tales from the Darker Side, Among the Shadows, Ellen Montgomery. And then I told you, was it 2 months ago? Just 1 month ago, about The Road to Altamont and Gabrielle Roy. And that was my first Gabrielle Roy read. And I did that because Sandy from Miss Reads a Lot and Shelley from Shelley Swearingen both read The Tin Flute and loved that book. And I thought, well, I'm going to see if I can find that book. And I wasn't able to find The Tin Flute, but I was able to find The Road Past Altamont, and I loved it. And so I've been on the hunt for more Gabrielle Roy and hopefully finding The Tin Flute, and I still haven't. But I did find Where Nests the Water Hen. And this again is set in rural Manitoba. She is a Canadian author, and this is a translated work originally in French. So I don't know much about this. I think that it's going to be kind of a prairie life, day-to-day story, but we will see. And I think that Gabrielle Roy could be a new favorite author. And so I'm looking forward to reading this. I'll probably do it in the autumn because it sounds kind of like that's when it should be read. And then I also picked up Cold Comfort Farm. This is by Stella Gibbons. And this is supposed to be absolutely hilarious. And I don't know if it will be. The cover looks like it's going to be. And it's just about village life. I think it's Ireland. I think it's in an Irish village, and it's just about village life and all of these particular characters that live in this village. And I'm looking forward to that one too. And then I picked up The Epic of Gilgamesh. What is so funny was 2 days after I picked up this book, I was commenting on Read by Fred's channel, and he was saying that at a party, he would try to strike up a conversation, and he would probably start talking about The Epic of Gilgamesh, and nobody would be interested. And I said, I would be. I just bought the book. So yes, this is like one of the oldest poems still in existence and still in print, I think. I think this is from maybe the third millennium BC. And I've heard it. I have never read it for myself, so I'm looking forward to that one. I picked up Tarzan of the Apes, and this is by Edgar Rice Burroughs. And I think we all kind of know the story of Tarzan. I have never actually read the story of Tarzan, so I am looking forward to diving into this. This will probably be one of my classics for 2023. And then I picked up this. This was on Gemma Books picture books video a while ago, and I had this as a kid. At least I think I did. If I didn't, I had one that was so close to it. But this is just a classic kids book. This is Each Peach, Pear, Plum, and this is by the Allbergs, Janet and Alan Allberg. And it's kind of I love the artwork in here. Love it, love it, love it. And you have to find Tom Thumb on every single page, but it's rhyming and it's just fun to read. And I have grandbabies, and I have more grandbabies on the way, so that is for them as much as for me. And then finally, The last book that I picked up, and it is in perfect condition, is Sun by Lois Lowry. I don't know how many people realize that The Giver is actually a quartet. It's 4 books, which are The Giver, The Messenger, The Sun, and Gathering Blue. And all of them are amazing books. But I didn't even really care for The Giver until my daughter told me that she heard that it was a series. And once I read the other 3 books, I fell in love with the whole series, and I have read it through a couple of times since then. And I think it's only been in the last 10 years that I've known that. So anyway, this is the final book that I didn't own in the Giver Quartet. And it's hardcover, and it is in just gorgeous, gorgeous condition. And so I had to pick it up. And that is it. You guys, that's it. That's all I've got for you. So, have you read any of these books? Did you know about the Giver Quartet? How did your July end up wrapping up? I'm looking forward to seeing everybody's wrap-up videos, but especially if you don't have a channel, talk to me down in the comments. Let me know what you've been reading and enjoying lately, and I will see you on Friday. Probably with the first wrap-up of August and what I've been reading so far in August. And so like if you like this, subscribe if you want to, and I will see you then. Bye everyone.